What is Shavuot and how do we do it? So I'm going to be giving an introduction to this biblical holiday for those of you who might be new to celebrating it. But even if you aren't new, if you've been celebrating for a while, stick around anyway. There might be something you haven't considered before, or there may be a new tradition that you'll want to give a try this year. In any case, let's dive in. So God gave his people several holy days or holidays, festivals, to remember and celebrate every year. Here are a list of them. You have Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Shavuot, and so forth. The purpose of God's holy days and festivals is to remember what God has done in the past and anticipate the fulfillment of his promises for the future. So, for example, Passover commemorates God delivering Israel from Egypt. These holidays also reveal the work of the Messiah. Once again, like God delivered Israel from slavery in Egypt, the Messiah delivered us from slavery to sin and death. It is not a coincidence that Yeshua, Jesus, died during the Passover season. So on a deeper level, Passover and the other festivals like Shavuot point to the Messiah's work. Finally, these holidays bring rhythm and intentionality to our lives, uniting God's people around significant events and the truths they reveal about God. One of the purposes of these festivals is to bring God's people together and unite us around a shared history and shared values. To give an example of how to think about this, in the United States, we celebrate Independence Day. Why? Well, it's one of our festivals. It's a reminder of our history as a nation, and it unites us around shared values and principles that we hold to as Americans. It's the same idea for those of us who celebrate God's holidays, for those of us who are believers. These holidays, they're all about commemorating events that define who we are and what we believe. So in this teaching, we're going to talk about one particular festival, and that is the Feast of Shavuot, or in English, the Feast of Weeks. In Greek, it is called Pentecost. The name Shavuot means weeks, hence the Feast of Weeks, and this word is the plural form of Shavua, week. And the name Shavuot comes from one of the main instructions connected to this festival. What is that? Well, God said to count 7 weeks from the first fruits offering within the week of unleavened bread to the day of Shavuot. So, from the first fruits offering at the time of Passover and unleavened bread, we count 7 weeks, 7 Shavuot, to the Feast of Shavuot, which occurs on the 50th day of this count. And that's actually where the name Pentecost comes from. It means 50th in Greek. But before we get into the specifics about how to celebrate this festival, I want to spend some time talking about the meaning of this festival. What is Shavuot all about? Well, just like unleavened bread and Sukkot, Shavuot is a harvest festival. This holiday celebrates the wheat harvest in ancient Israel, but like God's other festivals, Shavuot is much more than merely a celebration of the harvest. Shavuot is a memorial of God's saving acts in history, specifically in regard to the events surrounding Israel's journey out of Egypt to the Promised Land. So, just like Passover and unleavened bread, Shavuot is a memorial of the events surrounding Israel's deliverance from slavery in Egypt. Shavuot marks the end of the spring festivals, and like we saw earlier, Shavuot is connected to Passover by way of the counting of weeks, or the counting of the Omer, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Shavuot is the completion of the Passover season. Also, a popular and long-held tradition is that Shavuot was when God initially gave the Torah, his law, to Israel. After they left Egypt, Israel had reached the wilderness of Sinai in the 3rd month, according to Exodus 19, which would have been close to the time of Shavuot. There are also 2 loaves of bread that are given as a wave offering during Shavuot, which have been said to symbolize the 2 stone tablets containing the 10 Commandments. Now, the giving of the Torah, God's law, around or on the Feast of Shavuot is significant. When Israel was in Egypt, God told Moses to tell them 4 things he promised to do. Number 1, I will deliver you from slavery. Number 2, I will redeem you. Number 3, I will take you to be my people. And number 4, I will bring you into the land. The giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai is widely regarded as the fulfillment of God's promise to take Israel to be his people. It should be noted that "I will take you to be mine" is marriage covenant language, which is why the giving of the Torah is traditionally seen as a type of marriage ceremony. The prophet Jeremiah hints at this concept when he references the Sinai covenant and portrays the Lord as Israel's husband. So the Lord betrothed Israel at Mount Sinai, if you will, and Israel became his people. Israel spoke as one, saying, quote, "All that the Lord has spoken, we will do," which can be seen as Israel's wedding vows. Finally, the marriage contract was then written down in the form of the Torah. Now, this is a meaningful event not only for ancient Israel, but also all of us as Christians. When we receive the Messiah and we commit to following him, we become part of God's people, Israel. Israel's story becomes our story too. Thus, we make those same wedding vows to keep all that the Lord has spoken. That is what Shavuot is all about. It's kind of like a wedding anniversary. It's a day to remember and to celebrate the day that God took us to be his people. So now we can see why Shavuot is considered the completion of Passover. Passover is a memorial of Israel's deliverance from Egypt, and that deliverance was made complete when Israel committed to following the Torah as God's people. Israel was saved by God's grace and then given the Torah as the way to walk out their relationship with God. Being freed from Egypt means now living as a free people, and the Torah defines what that looks like. In the New Testament, just like Passover, Shavuot is given even greater significance. As the book of Acts records, Yeshua visited his disciples prior to his ascension and promised that the Holy Spirit would soon empower them in a remarkable new way. They would be his witnesses to Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, and eventually to the ends of the earth. Shortly after Yeshua's ascension, when the disciples were all gathered together in one place, God suddenly poured out his Spirit upon them, and as we read in the 2nd chapter of Acts, the gospel message was then preached in many different languages, and thousands came to know the Messiah as Savior and Lord. God chose to launch this world-changing, Spirit-driven movement on Shavuot, the day of Pentecost, and that movement continues to this day. The Spirit being poured out upon God's people is significant when it comes to God's law as well. One of the promises of the New Covenant, which was inaugurated by the Messiah, is that God would write his Torah, his law, upon the hearts of his people. Members of the New Covenant will have God's Torah inscribed upon their hearts, producing obedience to the commandments. This is what Ezekiel describes when he proclaims that God will give his people a new heart, put his Spirit within them, and cause them to, quote, "walk in my statutes and be careful to obey my rules." Paul alludes to these prophecies when he characterizes believers as those who live out, quote, "the righteous requirement of the law because they walk, quote, according to the Spirit." Also, this promise does not just apply to Jewish believers. Gentile believers are given the same Spirit in accordance with the New Covenant promise. So the Spirit being poured out on Shavuot is, once again, a fulfillment of what God wanted all along, a people who will be faithful to him. He will take us to be his people. Shavuot commemorates God giving us his Torah to show us how to live, and also his Spirit to empower us to live that way. Thus, Shavuot is a memorial of the giving of the Torah as well as the giving of the Holy Spirit in Acts 2. God said that all the nations would be blessed through Abraham's offspring. Through Messiah, we are adopted as Abraham's children and given the same mission to bless the nations. God gave us both the Torah and the Holy Spirit so that we may bring in the harvest of the nations for his glory. And that's what Shavuot is all about. It's a time to remember and celebrate the fact that we've been delivered, taken to be God's people, and empowered to reach the nations with the gospel. So what are some ways we can celebrate Shavuot today? Well, first, there is the counting of the Omer. The Bible tells us to count 50 days from the first fruits offering within the week of unleavened bread to the day of Shavuot. The first fruits of ripe barley was tied together in a bundle and brought to the priest at the temple to be waved before the Lord. In ancient times, beginning with the first fruits offering after the Sabbath within unleavened bread, an omer of barley was brought to the Jerusalem temple and waved before the Lord on each of the 49 days of the count. Traditionally, this period of counting is called the counting of the Omer. There's actually some debate about when the first fruits offering and thus the start of the count toward Shavuot should be performed. Leviticus 23:15 says to count from the day after the Sabbath. Some say that the count should start from the weekly Sabbath within unleavened bread, which would put the first fruits ceremony always on Sunday. Others argue that it should start after the opening high Sabbath of unleavened bread, which would put it always on the 16th of Nisan. There is some ambiguity in the text, and even the Pharisees and Sadducees debated this issue in the first century. Not surprisingly, believers continue to debate this very issue today, and I'm not going to get into that, but no matter when you start, we can still count the days to Shavuot. So how do we do that today practically? Well, in ancient Israel, the first fruits ritual pertained specifically to the land of Israel and depended upon a working priesthood and tabernacle or temple in Jerusalem. Since that is not available today, we can't observe many of the aspects of the ritual the way it is written in the Torah. So we can't do things like the traditional wave offering on each of the days of the Omer like they did in ancient Israel. However, just like with the other festivals in the Torah, we can still honor the memory of these rituals as we look forward to the time when the temple and priesthood are restored in the future. One way Judaism has traditionally done this is by reciting a blessing every evening from first fruits to Shavuot. They count the day and recite a blessing. Many people have also come up with their own traditions. For example, some families will make a calendar for this season and pick Bible verses to recite and memorize every evening. As for the actual day of Shavuot, the Torah says we are to treat this day as a type of Sabbath, a day when no ordinary work is to be done. So on Shavuot, we enjoy God's blessing of rest. Also, the Torah commands us to rejoice with our families and others on this day. So in order to keep this commandment to rejoice, many will get together at their local congregation or at someone's house and simply worship together or celebrate together, eat together, and just have fun fellowshipping. Traditionally, many people will also make it a point to give to the poor during Shavuot. This is based on the Torah commandment to leave the edges of your field unharvested for the poor, which is connected to the Feast of Shavuot. Another popular tradition is to read the book of Ruth on Shavuot. This is because the story of Ruth takes place during the harvest season, where Ruth is seen gleaning from the fields. Also, Ruth was a Moabite who became part of the people of Israel, so this reminds us of how we become part of God's people through the gospel of Messiah Yeshua, which again fits the theme of Shavuot. Some other common traditions include eating dairy, such as cheesecake and ice cream, which is meant to be a reminder of God's promise to bring us to a land flowing with milk and honey, and of the sweetness of the Torah. Also, some people will decorate their home or congregation with fresh greens and flowers, which again is a symbol of the Torah and how it is a tree of life to those who hold fast to its wisdom. So there you go. That is the Feast of Shavuot and what it means and how we can celebrate it. Real quick, just a shameless plug, but if you want to learn more about the biblical festivals and how to celebrate them, I wrote this short little book for you called A Christian Guide to the Biblical Feasts. If you are interested in why we do things like keep the Sabbath and festivals as Christians, and you want to be able to defend this view to those who ask about why you do these things, there is another book I wrote for you. It's called Remember the Sabbath, what the New Testament says about Sabbath observance for Christians. So you can find both of these books and more at my website, davidwilber.com. Anyway, Shavuot is an amazing biblical holiday which reminds us of what God has done for us and our purpose as followers of Messiah. I pray that your celebration of this festival will give you a greater appreciation of God's faithfulness and will inspire you to live in obedience to the Messiah and continue to be his witnesses in the world. Bless you all, and Chag Sameach. Hey everyone, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to see more content like this, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel. Also, don't forget to hit that little bell so that you'll be notified when new videos like this are released. One last thing, be sure to connect with me on my website, davidwilber.com. There, you can find a ton of free resources like articles and videos, learn more about the books that I've written, and subscribe to my newsletter to ensure you never miss an update. Again, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.